Well, you might have seen at the weekend that the Flaming Lips, the creative, innovative band, have been staging a couple of gigs for people to attend whilst maintaining social distancing. And of course, this happens in the context of gigs being cancelled all over the world because of COVID. And if you look at the images or the videos, you'll see that you've got audience members in groups of 1, 2 or 3, all within these zorbing balls, listening to the gig. They've got speakers inside the balls to amplify the sound. And my first thought when looking at it was that we're just trying too hard as a species. And yet I also kind of fascinated by the creative innovation that this event really emulates. But it makes me think about what it is we're losing by the closure of gigs, concerts, festivals, all the things that kind of are the tapestry of our lives. And it makes me think also about the history of festivals and how we have created these now highly advanced cultural formats in music and song and all sorts of things that become really the history of our lives. These are things that we weave together as memories of our upbringing and indeed our life journey. And it's that's what we lose when we cancel concerts, when we lose the cultural sector. The cancellation of Glastonbury isn't just the loss of a kind of economic unit or an income generating industry. It's the loss of those memories. It's the loss of heritage that these events sort of symbolize. And you kind of see when the anniversary of Glastonbury sort of came and went, the 50th anniversary, you can see it isn't really just about that. It's not just about the economics of it. It's about our lives as a whole and how we constitute them through these sorts of cultural performances. And I suppose for me, as someone that grew up with nothing at all musically, apart from Prince and listening only to Prince, I've grown as a result of having a child who's now into Radio 1 to appreciate how music is such a central part of our formation, that it's really that we're losing. And now, of course, it's hard to balance that against the imminent threat of life that COVID may bring. And even with the best distancing, it's hard to really claim that, in fact, things can ever be sufficiently safe. But we have to be mindful of the fact that the loss of these memories, the loss of this history also has relevance. It's something we need to consider before we simply switch it off. And yet we also need to be creative and mindful of the ways in which culture evolves. Part of me thinks that we do live in an almost hyper overproduced cultural world today, that where the staging of events is so complex, so sophisticated and so perfect that in fact we lose some degree of spontaneity. I remember when the London 2012 Olympic Games took place, one of the artist groups that took part in the Cultural Olympiad was a dance company called Streb. And they ran a series of pop-up events across the cities, none of which were advertised or marketed, but they just emerged around major venues. So dancers were enacting choreographies on the London Eye and other venues. And there's something to be said with spontaneous culture, and perhaps the absence of programmed content at the moment allows us to think more creatively, a bit like what the Flaming Lips have done with this concert. And I think I'm all for that. I think that's one of the things we need to return to. This original notion of festivity comes out of a more spontaneous, informal society. And that may be one of the gains that we can rediscover as a result of these losses that we're seeing within the cultural sector at large.